I watched a parent remove a cell phone from their 14-year-old. This child, along with many others, flew into a rage. It was something basically equivalent to maybe taking someone's substances away immediately.
There are many cases of kids who become violent toward themselves or their parents. It's really important that parents have a plan. If they're going to take devices away, they need to have a plan in place, but they'll come out on the other side of it if parents don't give in to the pressure that their kids are going to exert on them.
At that point in time, I was probably gaming on average 8 or 9 hours a day. They very much looked at it as you're an addict and you need to detox from your addiction. One of my big concerns, truthfully, going into Restart was I was 27 years old at the time, and I figured I've spent 27 years building all of these bad habits. How am I going to enter a facility and break 27 years of bad habits in 45 days? I always felt like when I was trying to quit gaming on my own, it was, like looking into a forest and knowing there's a target out there and I need to go, shoot this bow and arrow and hit the target. But how, where? I don't see it. I can't do that. It doesn't make sense. But in joining up into a community of other people that have been there is, now here's the trail and a guide to walk me along the way.
That was from the previous 2 episodes of It's All in Your Head podcast, MedCircle's first podcast, hosted by Jackie Colbeth. It was all on the topic of digital addiction. Jackie spoke to Dr. Cash, who runs a treatment center for those struggling with digital addiction, and also a gentleman named Charlie, who you heard just there had developed addictive behaviors towards or with technology over 27 years. And his story is absolutely incredible. We'll dive into both of those episodes right now with the host herself, Jackie Colbeth. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Kyle. How are you?
You know what I did right before? I'm good. What I did right before I got on this live recap with you is I looked at how much I was on my phone every day, because you know how it tells you.
Oh, yeah.
You're out. Yeah. So what would you guess my average hours per day? It's over an hour.
I'm going to say 12.
Oh, wow. Okay. It was half that. It was 6 hours.
Okay.
Also, that tells you what you think about me. Just always.
No, that tells you what I think of myself through the lens of that seems excessive.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually got off social media a few weeks ago, and it probably is lower because of that. How much you don't have to look at your phone, but how much time do you think you spend on your phone a day?
I honestly will strive to spend 5 hours.
Okay, 5 or less.
Do I hit that frequently? I'd say I'm anywhere around 6 to 7. Yeah. But I do now make a concerted effort to do time blocks with it. Yeah. So if it's constantly buzzing, right, and looking, it's I can't focus well on the tasks, and then I think I do everything crappy. So I'll put my phone in another room and turn it off and do a task, and that seems to help a bit, but I mean, it's hard.
Well, and we're just talking about our phones. I've already done a live workshop for our MedCircle members today. You and I have this live recap. And so when you combine computer screens, phone screens, and look, I'm going to watch television tonight. And so there's a TV screen in front of my face. We are bombarded with digital addiction. You made such a good point in your interview with Charlie, and you said, I can live without Jack Daniels. I'm quoting you here, but I can't live without technology. It's a requirement for my life. So how does one who has, these pervasive patterns that are negatively impacting them manage that digital addiction? Man, I'm going to give some stuff away in the podcast, but he went cold turkey. He had no smartphone, y'all. He existed with a flip phone, and he didn't have Wi-Fi in his house. But Jackie, you said you could relate to that because You've mentioned you've struggled with alcohol.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, anything addictive, and getting really into it, I can relate to, just, on a human basis. It's the interesting thing, the kind of scary thing, and I remember thinking this when I quit drinking, was it's like, well, you do adapt, fortunately. I pass 100 liquor stores a day. I have for the last 20 some odd years. I haven't gone in, bought anything, or had a drink, but I relate in his clip to when he said, you want to get these tools to help you, overcome something you're struggling with that's not enhancing your life. And then you reach for your toolkit and there's nothing in it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, okay, well, how am I going to slay this beast? I have no tools, no weapons, no anything. And where do I go to learn that? And for what's that going to look like? It's all very scary.
Yeah, it's all very scary, and it's all relatively new. I remember I was in high school in 2000 to 2004. And during that year, there was a kid in my history class who just didn't show up to school one day. And then he didn't show up the next day. And then he was gone for like a week. And we started asking, where did this, I forget his name. Let's just say his name is Chris. Right. We go, where did Chris go?
Right.
And it turns out he had become fully immersed into a game. I think it was called Second Life, but it could have been called something else. And it completely took over his entire life. I mean, did not go to school, played this game, did not leave his room, did not talk to his parents. My understanding was he didn't even really eat. It was like, oh yeah, I got to go do that. And then right back to the game. And this was back in early 2000s, where there certainly wasn't the resources that were today. But what was so interesting to me about your conversation with Charlie is that he did this, not super recently, but more recently, and he couldn't find any resources for digital addiction. That's surprising to me, Jackie.
Yeah, it was surprising to me. It was a little disheartening to me. And then on the flip side, I'm kind of like, well, maybe I should have expected this. I don't think, our society necessarily gets ahead of the curve, if you know what I mean, with a lot of mental health programs. So I was so excited when I came across Restart, because even me looking just in preparation and you wanting to learn more myself, how easy would it be? And, but if you type in alcohol, substance abuse, you'll have like 8,000 treatment centers, pop up, and, it's plentiful amount of resources, but you'll still notice, there aren't that many programs to your point, being 2023 now.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, Dr. Cash was starting to see this in the early 90s, people around Silicon Valley and the Pacific Northwest, where most of, tech companies were founded. So, our society, in my opinion, is lagging. It's slow to these things. So on one hand, it didn't necessarily surprise me. I was just thankful he found somewhere to go help him.
Yeah, we're so good on the technological advancements. We're not so good at creating nets and resources for those who struggle with those technological advancements. You mentioned Restart and Dr. Cash. I'd love to play our live viewers and our replay viewers, our viewers in general, a clip from that episode. So let's go to that.
We've got the social media, we've got the video games, and now around the horizon is the metaverse. It's augmented reality. It seems to me to be a step beyond. I'm looking at my screen. I'm involved with one of my social media platforms. I'm checking it. And now we have this new product or new way of becoming, I'm sure, digitally addicted, which is augmented reality. And I will watch people put on the goggles and they're off to the races. Mm-hmm. They are within this metaverse. They don't particularly want to leave because they can kind of create their own avatar. So it's almost like a more comfortable version for them of reality. And I'm wondering if you're starting to see at this point, because it's a bit in its infancy, has Restart in the programs come in contact with people who seem to be addicted to literally an alternative reality.
Yes. And this is recent. Up until recently, we've not had it, but now we are starting to get clients who have been gotten addicted to virtual reality and augmented reality. And it's very disturbing because if this is started when somebody is young, and in these cases, they were very young when they started, 8, 9, 10 years old, humans are still sorting out reality.
Yes.
Throughout childhood, humans are sorting out reality. This is a distortion. This is a removal from reality. It's giving an alternate universe that our brains cannot possibly really understand when we're immature. So I was at a conference 5 years ago with somebody from Stanford who'd been very involved in the development of VR. And he said at the conference, this stuff is too powerful to ever use for anything but therapeutic uses. It should never be popularized. But of course, it is. It has become popularized. And the reality distortion that I have seen as a result of it is very, very worrisome. So if you're going to use virtual reality, like if you're a parent, don't let your kid have a virtual reality headset. They have to be grown up and out of your house and on their own and no longer dependent on you.
Very interesting. I'm not a parent. I'm an uncle. Jackie's not a parent, but she's an aunt.
I am.
If you had a child, or let's just say you were babysitting how old is your niece?
2.5.
2.5. You're babysitting your niece and she wants to play with a VR headset because that's what she's used to. I'm just saying hypothetically.
Right.
How would you handle that? Would you just say, yeah, here you go, it's fine for an hour? Or after these conversations, would you think, no, we're going to have to do something else?
Well, I always like to check with her parents just in case they don't agree with any of my
fair. That's the correct answer.
My disciplinarian skills. The hard part about that, right? And you're an uncle, so you get this. Thankfully, we have siblings who do a good job. And, my niece is much younger than your nephew, but they do a good job being cognizant of not letting the kid get completely, hooked and attached. Because one babysitting visit with you and me is not going to give them, you know what I mean? Like, you know what, Aunt Jackie?
I thought you were going to say one babysit visit with you and me is way more detrimental than whatever they're going to find in digital addiction world.
Also true.
Also may be true. Yeah.
Also true.
Real fun aunt and uncle, by the way.
Like real fun, but honestly, Kyle, it's a good question, right? Like I want to spend one-on-one quality time with my niece. If she's waving like a headset, like I'd rather hang out with this and be in here than see you. That's a scary proposition, especially for kids, because they're just like, they're sponges.
Yeah. Well, when your episode dropped on Monday, I was reviewing some of the comments, and one of the commenters said that they have a child 7 or 8 years old, and she games all the time in VR. All the time. They said that she games.
Yep.
And they said it's because this is where she makes her friends. She struggles with making friends at school. She struggles with that in-person connection, but virtually she started meeting these kids on Minecraft and Roblox around 3, 4, 5 years old. And now she's 8 or 9 and she's known these other kids for years. So it's hard for me. I imagine it would be hard for the parent to say, well, we're going to take away your one connection to your friends. That's tough to do in that scenario. Do you have any thoughts?
That's a conundrum, right? We live such an isolated existence, even more so, I think, after COVID. So it's, you're almost between the rock and the hard place of like, would you like some connection, even if it's a bit artificial, or do you want absolutely none because you feel like you can't have those. But I think people just need to be reminded, you can make friends in real life. Like, you can go out and find groups. It doesn't have to be exclusively online. There's lots of different things. I mean, I would just encourage someone to try that, because it's not really a true statement to say, well, I can't make friends in person. We can all make friends in person. It's probably going to be harder for some. And I totally appreciate that. But I think it's worth kind of walking through the fear, because at any given time, I don't know what online friends truly look like, talk like, walk like. I mean, unless we're FaceTiming off the game, you're missing out on all these things. I think a generation of younger people don't know they're missing out on, almost, if that makes sense.
That's a good point. Yeah. You wouldn't be missing out. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't even know. They're kind of like, oh yeah, like, you've had a really crappy day, or first time I see my best friend after a crappy day and she gives me a hug, or you haven't seen someone you love in a while. That kind of gets lost. And I think it's worth, at this point, putting the effort in to seek it out.
Have you ever been worried that you're spending too much time in front of a screen?
I'll be honest, like, I got plenty other worries for me than screen time.
Okay.
And I only say that because, I'll be honest, I'm not a big adopter, and anyone who knows me, as you do, can tell you this. I never really took to social media. I never really enjoyed it. It always felt a bit artificial to me, and just one of those things where I didn't like it. Like, for all the reasons, maybe some people like social media platforms, I dislike it. So the good news is, taking that away and that interest, that eliminates many hours, as when you put it aside online. But I'm also, I'm 42. I remember a world before the internet.
Right.
So to me, I embrace and kind of relish if I can go on a hike, if I can go have a coffee with somebody. I relish that stuff, because I felt like I grew up with that, and now it's been so taken away. I mean, people don't call, they don't drop by your house. Everything's, typing, texting, emailing. And I relish being able to go out and do something without my phone. So, I figure, hey, I got spared this particular, kind of addiction or obsession. But I have so much empathy for people who are just kind of, going through it, in the middle of it.
Yeah, no question. I can understand the insidious nature of digital addiction with one experience I had, or have, I guess. Years ago, my boyfriend at the time knew I had brought up this game I used to play in 8th grade on the computer. And for Christmas or my birthday or something, he got me that game. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't played this game since I was in 8th grade, blah, blah, blah. Well, I was right back in it. And that was probably 8 or 9 years ago. And I still play that game every week. And that was
Is this the game you've mentioned before?
Yes.
What's the name of the game?
It's called StarCraft.
Okay, I've heard of this.
Yeah, it's been around forever. They have professional gamers, and I'll watch the games. I'll participate in the games. I play live online. And so and I understand now. I can turn it off and move on, and I can go a long time and not play it. And we were just together in California for a whole week. I didn't even think of the whole game once. But look at that one introduction, and now it's been in my life for 9 years, or a reintroduction, and it's been in my life for 9 years. I understand that. And Charlie really talked about some of those concepts and the addiction and the co-occurring mental health disorders in his interview. I'd love to share that with our viewers now.
And I'm wondering if you had struggles going into freshman year, sophomore year, with maintaining the gaming and the load of college.
I actually started out, it kind of just tapered down. My freshman year, I did decent, not as good as I did in high school, but I still had around a 3.0 GPA. So, not the worst either.
No.
I had dealt with the first instances of depression my freshman year of college. And so that was kind of a new experience all around for me that I didn't do well with. Yes. So the further into college I got, the more I isolated, I withdrew. I really thought it was just depression, that was why I was spending so much time gaming. I just can't get myself going in the morning, sort of a thing. And so my grades continued to decline until end of the first semester of my junior year. I had about a 0.4 GPA. Yep. And that was when I finally had to own up to my parents that things weren't going well, and I felt like I needed to leave college for my own mental health.
Sure.
And so that was ended up being exactly what I did. I dropped out under a hardship withdrawal for depression, and I moved back in with my parents and went into what I think of now as kind of my functional addict days, where I went back to working at Pizza Hut, which was my high school job, but I did really well and got promoted a few times, and turns out it wasn't just the depression that was causing issues.
Lots to unpack there. I want to start, Jackie, with this misnomer that if you're addicted to video games, or if you have a digital addiction, then you don't have a life. That is your life. He spoke so eloquently. When he was in high school, he gamed a lot, but he got straight A's. He had a job that was 30 hours a week. Yeah. Now he's keeping this job at Pizza Hut. He's getting promotions, and when you're doing all these things, it's hard to see that gaming's in your way, that this addiction is in your way. Yeah. I'd be curious to know, if you feel comfortable sharing, of course, did you ever have a period in your life where you thought, oh my gosh, I can drink and function?
All the way up until age of 22.
What does that feel like? Explain that to me, because I don't understand that.
Sure. So and I'll just speak for myself, but it's like the most wonderful way to self-dilute. Like, how can I have a problem if I'm achieving things? How can I have a problem? Like, we laugh. I'm an open book. Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, I was in the National Honor Society, contrary to popular belief. But I was, okay? And my parents had to go accept that honor because I was in rehab. Wow. I think that pretty much highlights in a story that I played varsity soccer as a freshman. I had a scholarship, athletic scholarship to college. I think certain people, myself, would be one of these, or if I thought I could hit kind of check marks and achieve certain things that maybe other people wouldn't achieve, usually athletic in nature, but also academic. How could I have a problem? I mean, you're that committed to kind of checking that off. I mean, was I passionate about scholastics? No. Was I passionate about athletics? No. But I was decent or above average at those. So I just focused on that. And thought, well, who's going to look twice? Yeah. Who's going to ever even suspect it? So it's a really awesome way to just kind of dilute yourself and keep the parts moving. But that slowly, in my case, in Charlie, I think I could speak for him as he describes it, that's all fine and good. But as time goes by, I almost lost my scholarship by the time I got to freshman year in college because I was on academic probation because I had a 1.8 GPA. So the NCAA, could pull my scholarship if I didn't get out of that. I used to go to class and I didn't go to classes. It's harder and harder to kind of maintain. So I think when you're doing these things and you're kind of fooling yourself in the process, it keeps you that much further away from finding another way to live because it's just so reinforcing.
Really well explained. I have a better understanding of that now. I interviewed Dr. Judith Joseph, who's a psychiatrist out in New York, and she we did a series on video game addiction. Bridget,
Yep.
if you could put that in the chat or in the description of this video, people might want to check that out.
That's great.
And that series, we talked about the co-occurring mental health conditions that can often co-occur with an addiction like video game addiction. And it's interesting for me to hear Charlie talk about the depression, which seemed like, just the way he explained it, I'm making a huge assumption here, that seemed like the depression almost came out of the addiction rather than the addiction being a coping mechanism for the depression.
Right.
When my understanding too with this is that when people are finding treatment for co-occurring conditions like addiction and depression, the first thing we have to do is get control of the substance use. Because if your mind is chemically altered, then how is CBT going to help you in the treatment?
Yeah.
With video game addiction, though, I'm not really sure what exactly how that's handled. But in the Restart program that Dr. Cash spoke to, it seemed very holistic. We're doing group therapy. We're outside. We're in actual individual therapy. We've abstained from the addiction. They cover it all, and that seems so hard to be stripped down to the basics, to remove everything, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to get your take on this abstinence as a way towards recovery.
Well, I abstain from alcohol because I feel like if I have a sip of it again, like my life will end.
Yeah.
So like, for me, abstinence just means like, you know, hanging in there, staying alive, you know, but it's difficult, right? Like you take something that you're dependent on, emotionally and spiritually, whether it's a video game, substance, whatever it might be. And, you know, taking that away is jarring.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of rocks your entire world having just that one element taken out of there. And, you know, I don't do great moderation. So I think for me, abstaining is just easier with the way I'm built than kind of like I'd just be torturing myself if I tried to have like a cocktail and like go home, you know, or just had one. To me, it's kind of like it's easier for me to abstain than to even just have one. And I have to imagine with Charlie, it's easier not to even look at a clip of a video game than to try to in some way say, hey, I'm going to have this be a casual part of my routine when, you know, Charlie nor I got very casual results with how things were turning out in our life, you know?
Yeah, well said. I remember when Charlie shared that he was venturing into real estate, and he said, you know, I'm going to throw video games to the side for a while and focus on real estate. And he ended up closing this really big deal that took a lot of time and a lot of work. And he said, all right, as a reward, I'm going to play video games tonight. Yeah. And at the surface, you just think, of course, you work hard. Now go chill with some video games, live your life. And he said, but I couldn't stop. I played all night into the morning. And then I thought that wasn't enough. I want to do a whole week. And then he did a whole week of gaming.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing that I would, just like you said, one sip won't be enough for me. And so I can't do it. One night of gaming is not enough for him. He couldn't do it. Abstinence was the only way. I love to share this final clip of Charlie for our viewers. Let's take a look.
I'm wondering for our viewers, what may be a typical, without giving any proprietary info out, but what might be a typical cadence of a program at Restart? Is it group therapy? Is it maybe family? Is it getting back to nature? Just sort of wondering what people might expect if they're watching this and saying, you know what? This might be something I need and could really benefit my life, but I'm curious as to kind of, you know, what goes down? What do we do there?
In both the adolescent and the adult programs, they are, when they come, they are living in the country, and it's rural, It's very beautiful. And it's a small community of people in a living together. So it's not in any way institutional. It's much more sort of family style, because we want them to feel comfortable, and they are all socially anxious pretty much when they arrive. So the intimacy of that small group works really well. And they have a combination of, well, for the adults, they have a combination of some days spent at the ranch initially, and then they transition to a different locale that's also rural.
Yep.
And then they're taking care of animals at the ranch. We have ponies and goats and cats and chickens and a dog.
That's awesome.
And they enjoy that, and they're learning responsibility and empathy, looking how to take care of the needs of these other animals, and as well as their own needs. So they do that, but they are also coming into our center, which is in an urban location in Bellevue. And they're doing group therapy, individual therapy, but they're also having a good time.
That was obviously not Charlie, Dr. Cash, rather, from her recovery program. That all sounds great. I'm so glad that is there for people. I don't want it to sound like a vacation. And when you hear just that soundbite, you go, well, I'll go there. That sounds like a wonderful weekend away. And maybe it would be a wonderful weekend away.
Right.
But these people are putting in work. They are going through withdrawals. I remember Charlie mentioning, sorry, my camera is blurry, but I remember Charlie mentioning it took him 11 days not to feel anxious once technology was removed from his life. And when he went into the communal kitchen, somebody was making eggs, and he goes, I was furious because I wanted to make my breakfast and somebody was in there. And that just shows that this is real. There are people out there that roll their eyes at digital addiction. And these people are going through really difficult things in this recovery process. Yeah. And then Charlie, I just keep talking, Jackie, but then Charlie did a 10-month outpatient program after the inpatient program. This is a year-long commitment that he gave to his, I'll call it, sobriety from technology, and then very slowly incorporated those elements back into his life. Like I mentioned, flip phone and no Wi-Fi, living in today's world. And he did it, y'all. He did it. He did it. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the clip we just watched or anything I just said?
Yeah, I mean, I have so much admiration for Charlie and anyone else, going through that, going down that path, because I like to say, treatment centers are in beautiful places on the outside because most of us in there are not feeling very beautiful on the inside. Mm-hmm. I think it's almost like, okay, if we can have just some sort of setting, right, where you're, taken out of the environment that is probably in many areas contributing to your issue. Mm-hmm. If you can extract that person, put them around nature, acreage, a lot of treatment centers, to your point. Yeah, they sound like a spa, and I'm sure some of them, are, but I think it's the intention of anyone who embarks and checks themselves into a treatment. I mean, really, it's what they're going to make of it, right? And I think the more programs and like busy you are during the day. So Dr. Cash, talked about the different groups, the different responsibilities with the animals, it's giving you purpose. It's giving you things to do. And yes, it can sound a little vacation-y, but there's a method, I think, to that environment, if you will, that if anything is just a little more conducive and supportive for people who are, really, like at rock bottom, in the throes of whatever they're going through. So it's definitely one of those programs where I'm sure everyone there, the irony is you walk into one of these places and, you're not exactly feeling like you're on a vacation. It sounds good, but when you get there, it is work. But I've seen people put in a lot of work. I've seen people put in minimal work. I've seen people put in no work. It's really what you want to make of it with the surroundings and the care that you're currently getting. And I definitely wouldn't classify it as fun, but I would classify it as rewarding, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. As somebody who's celebrating 20 years of sobriety and has been to rehab, been to treatment, what advice would you give for somebody walking in on that very first day into their treatment facility?
Well, I would say, God bless you. You're really, what I would say to that person is, God bless you. You're one of the few who's actually getting a huge opportunity. I mean, there are so many people, Kyle, this, they desperately want and need treatment and they can't get it. So first and foremost, no, you are so blessed and so lucky even to have the opportunity, but also two, be brave, be courageous. I heard, the phrase I like, it's sort of like courage is, doing things in the face of fear, not in the absence of fear. So I think, what I mean is, stay encouraged, be brave, look at these things and just know that you don't have to struggle as hard. I think that's your life doesn't have to be as difficult as it is the day you roll into one of these places. Like it doesn't have to be. And I would just send love, encouragement, and just a hang in there. I know it's not a walk in Central Park, but you're in a great place and you have a huge opportunity.
Yeah. Well said. Again, I will tell people if you are not struggling with addiction, but somebody who is, we have some fabulous series on the topic of substance use. We have some fabulous workshops on addiction over at MedCircle.com. I rarely say I know on MedCircle, but I know that having a supportive community around you is so pivotal to your recovery. And so if you are the support system and you want to get educated on this, you want to know what goes on in the treatment centers, you want to know what type of therapies are used, you want to know how they work with co-occurring disorders, and you want to know how to be a supporter, how to listen, how to ask questions, we have all that information. It's incredibly valuable at MedCircle.com. And
now, Kyle, you forgot to tell the audience, and I'd be remiss if I didn't get it in before. We are not doctors.
Oh, so we're not. And we're going to tell you this every time. Okay.
Yes, we're going to tell you that every time. So just know this is coming from a communications major, all content delivered during this recap.
That's true. People are probably used to seeing me interview people now. So they just, look at Dr. Jackie's on today. Yeah. No, Dr. Jackie.
No, Dr. Jackie.
No, just plain old Jackie.
Just plain Jackie.
And plain old Kyle, please. I get a lot of emails that go, are you taking patients? I go, I never have and never will. Not a doctor. Yeah, you don't want me as your doctor. Yeah.
No.
I'd be a great friend, though. I'll be a great
Absolutely.
friend.
I'll vouch for that.
Yeah, exactly. Jackie, I think Bridget has a comment she wants to throw up. Bridget's our producer at MedCircle. Let's throw up this comment and see what's there. El Leon says, I was reflecting on myself, why I couldn't finish my trade school, and I sold my gaming system, and that unlocked my wheels to move forward, and I'm almost done with my trade school.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what it just takes. It takes the removal of the distraction, And I think especially when we talk about digital addiction, everything is on a spectrum. There are some people who are going to game 80 hours a week, and it's really debilitating. And there's some of us, and we know we're on it too much. We're scrolling through Instagram a little too long. We got in bed at 10 because that's what we said, but at 11:15 we're still scrolling. Yep. That happens. So I think the more we can use technology and not have technology use us, the better off we are. And as someone I'll call it 2 months sober from social media, I will say that the best thing is that when I grab my phone now, I don't without thinking about it, hit open an app. Oh, yeah. For the first 4 days, maybe, Jackie, I would grab my phone and I'd be like, let me open Instagram. Oh, I don't have Instagram anymore. Right. It was like my hand just was keen to go do it. And I had to retrain myself. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I've even hit, like, I'm on a Mac right now. And like, if I'm on an iPad before the Mac, like, I've gone to like swipe the screen on my computer and I'm going, I love that I live alone, or someone would think I'm insane.
I will up you. Okay. This is so embarrassing. And
okay, good.
This happened last week. I'm in California and I grabbed one of those real estate magazines because I love looking at all the great houses. And I'm looking at the house and I'm like this, and I'm tired, y'all. So bring that into the conversation. I hate that my camera's blurry again. But I'm looking at the magazine and I go, oh, I love this house. And I tap the house in the magazine. And I did that. I go, what are you doing, Kyle? Tap at this magazine.
Yes.
Right, make the picture bigger.
Oh, yeah. It's like jarring too, because like if you're anything like me, I have to tap the paper 4 times. And then I'm like, oh, it's not opening because it's print. It's paper.
Yeah, traditional.
Yeah.
If anyone can relate to that, it would make me feel a lot better in the comments. Oh, yeah. So if it's happened, let me know. Yeah.
You do.
Jackie, your podcast comes out every Monday right here on YouTube and everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you've listened to a few podcasts and liked what you're hearing, please leave a review on anywhere you want to leave a review for those podcasts. And if you don't like what you're hearing, you can let us know. You know, we're open to feedback for sure. Leave us a comment. Well, I'll read it. I'll read it and I'll tell Jackie about it.
It'll filter through Kyle, so my heart isn't shattered into a bazillion pieces.
There you go. Exactly. Jackie, I just love seeing you. Thanks for coming on this, and I'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Take care.
All right. Bye, everyone. I'm Kyle Kittleson. Remember, whatever you're going through, you got this.
So I found pornography when I was 13. By the time I got to be a senior in high school, it went from like having a place in my life to like taking over. When I started to like struggle with my schoolwork, when I started to struggle with my studies, that's when I tried to stop. And I found out that I couldn't. I wanted so badly to feel like I could tell somebody and get help. It wasn't until a year later, I was at a different college, and the dean's staff said, we know some of you struggle with pornography, and we want to help you. And it was in that context that I felt like, okay, it's safe here. And so it was in that context that I found, I guess, the courage to kind of step forward and say, like, this is something that I struggle with.